Number 10 leads us to the country of Israel. Israel is the sole Jewish state globally. Despite its small size though, it has a very big significant impact on global affairs. Modern day Israel's roots can be traced back to the World War I when Zionists advocated for a Jewish state in Palestine. Currently, the boundaries of Israel remain disputed, with the United Nations Security Council denouncing Israeli settlements in the area in 2016, leading Israel to sever ties with many of the countries that voted in favor of the resolution. Israel is a parliamentary democracy divided into 6 regions. While Jerusalem is Israel's claimed capital, it lacks broad international recognition though, and most foreign countries keep their embassies in Tel Aviv. Number 9 leads us to the United Arab Emirates, also known as the UAE, is a federation of 7 emirates. The country comprises rocky deserts, wetlands, waterless mountains, and coastlines that extend along the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman. Before the discovery of oil in the mid-20th century, the UAE's economy relied mainly on fishing and pearl industry. The country then underwent a significant economic transformation when oil exports began in the 1960s. Today, the UAE's per capita gross domestic product rivals that of prominent Western European nations, according to the CIA's World Factbook. On top of that, the World Economic Forum recognized the country as the most competitive economy in the Arab world. Despite being traditional at its core, the UAE is one of the Gulf's most progressive nations with a constitution that supports religious freedom. The UAE is also famous for Dubai and Abu Dhabi, its 2 largest cities, which attract millions of tourists each and every year. And of course, those places are known for the expensive, lavish lifestyles that many of their residents live. Coming at the number 8 spot, we have Japan. Japan is recognized as one of the most literate and technologically advanced nations in the world. It consists of 4 main islands and over 6,800 smaller islands. The country's political unification dates back to the late 4th and early 5th centuries BC. Civilization flourished from the late 8th to the late 12th centuries, followed by centuries of military rule. Japan also has the 3rd largest economy in the entire world, and the country is a major producer of motor vehicles, electronic equipment, as well as steel. The service sector makes up the highest percentage of the economy in terms of gross domestic product and employment. A powerful country at number 7 is France. France has had a significant impact on the world throughout history in areas such as science, politics, economics, as well as culture. And with a high income economy, France is considered a very wealthy nation by the World Bank. The French economy is a combination of private enterprise as well as government intervention. The country relies heavily on tourism as one of its major economic contributors and is often listed as the most visited country in the world. Other important economic sectors include agriculture, energy, and defense, with France being a leading exporter of military weapons. Coming down in the number 6 spot, we have South Korea. The Republic of South Korea, commonly known as South Korea, has faced challenges in establishing true democracy due to authoritarian rule and military coups. Nevertheless, since 1987, the country has consistently held direct presidential elections. South Korea's economy is known for its high-tech and service-based industries, and it has become a foreign investment success story. The nation has seen steady growth and poverty reduction since the 1960s and is now among the world's largest economies. The capital city of Seoul is home to the headquarters of Samsung, Hyundai, and Kia, representing 2 of South Korea's important exports, which are technology and cars. South Korea has one of the world's largest gross national savings and reserves of foreign investment. They also have an increasing disposable household income that's all across the country. Next up, coming in at number 5, we have the United Kingdom. This is definitely a highly developed nation that wields significant international, economic, political, and scientific as well as cultural influence. As the nation has withdrawn from the European Union, the UK's global role is undergoing a transformation that raises some new questions. The UK's global influence is rooted in the British Empire, which developed during the colonial era and peaked in the early 20th century before transitioning to decolonization in the aftermath of World War II. London, the capital city, is a major international financial hub and one of the most frequently visited cities on the planet. The banking and tourism industries are components of a broader service sector that drives much of the country's economic growth. Number 4 leads us to Germany. Germany, which is the largest European Union member state in terms of population, boasts one of the world's largest economies and has increasingly gained prominence in the global community since reunification. Its central location in Europe is flanked by 9 neighboring countries, and Germany's economy is a social market economy that combines free market capitalism with social service guarantees. It is one of the world's largest and most active importers and exporters, with the service sector including telecommunications, healthcare, and tourism being the largest contributor to the economy there. Industry and agriculture are also significant economic sectors. Germany has a highly skilled as well as a very prosperous workforce. A lot of immigrants are moving there because of the opportunities. But despite being one of the world's most popular migration destination, the country's open door policy has been met with some criticism following recent crimes that have been committed at its borders. From there, we look at Russia in at the number 3 spot. Russia, with an enormous size, is the world's largest country in terms of land area, covering most of the northern Asia and a significant part of Eastern Europe. It is twice the size of the second largest country, Canada, and shares borders with more than a dozen nations, as well as it shares sea borders with Japan and the United States. After the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, Russia became an independent country. Russia is ranked number 2 in terms of military power, and it has a whopping annual defense budget of over $82 billion US. Tensions, though, between Russia and the West have increased as a result of Russia's annexation of Crimea back in 2014 and its involvement in the conflict in Ukraine, leading to sanctions being imposed by Western nations. Powerful country at number 2 is China. China is home to one of the world's oldest civilizations and has been ruled by the Communist Party since 1949. And that's when it was established as the People's Republic of China. With over 1.4 billion people, it is the world's most populous country and one of the largest countries by land area. China has experienced rapid economic growth over the past several decades and has become one of the world's fastest growing major economies. China has transitioned from a centrally planned to a market-based economy, and it now has the world's second largest economy, behind only the United States. While China's economic growth has lifted hundreds of millions of people out of poverty, it still faces several domestic challenges, such as balancing population growth with natural resources, as well as the rising income inequality and pollution. Ending this episode off at number 1, the most powerful country in the world is the United States of America. It's also the most powerful military and economic force on the planet. The United States of America is, of course, a North American nation with a cultural impact that extends globally, particularly through its music, films, and television. The The United States operates as a constitutional-based federal republic made up of 50 states, and its economy is the world's largest, backed by advanced technology. Among its most valuable exports are computers and electronic equipment, vehicles, chemicals, food, live animals, as well as military hardware. On top of that, the United States has the planet's largest coal reserves, and despite its global dominance, the nation faces internal challenges, including income inequality, racial tensions, as well as a growing divide among its citizens. The United States is often a leading participant in international organizations and played a key role in the creation of institutions like the United Nations, NATO, and the World Bank.
The Italian military encompasses the Italian Army, the Italian Navy, and the Italian Air Force. Now, there's a fourth branch of the armed forces known as the Carabinieri, and this pretty much takes on the role of the nation's military police, and they're involved in missions and operations overseas as well. The Italian military was formed on May 4th, 1861, and they rank number 11 in the world on the scale of military power. Italy's available manpower is 28,011,003. They have 357,000 military personnel in total, and they have 175,000 active personnel and 182,000 personnel in reserve. When it comes to aircraft strength, they sit at 831. They have 94 fighter aircraft, 182 attack aircraft, 38 transport aircraft, 185 trainer aircraft. Their helicopter strength sits at 475, and they have 59 attack helicopters. When it comes to combat tanks, that number sits at 200. They have 4,000 armored fighting vehicles, 164 self-propelled artillery, 90 towed artillery, and 21 rocket projectors. Their naval assets sit at 143. Their aircraft carriers are at 5. Frigates sit at 12. 4 destroyers, 1 corvette, 8 submarines, 14 patrol vessels, and their mine warfare strength is at 10. Moving on now to number 4, we have Germany. The Bundeswehr is the military force of Germany. The Bundeswehr is divided into a military part, which is the armed forces, and the civil part with the armed forces administration. The military portion consists of Germany's army, Germany's navy, and Germany's air force, as well as the joint support service and the joint medical service, and also the cyber and information space command. Germany's military was founded on November 12, 1955, but its current form was formed on October 3rd, 1990, and they rank 10 in the world. Germany's available manpower is 37,010,559. Their total military personnel is 21,608,447, and they have 178,641 active personnel, and for reserve personnel, that's at 30,000. Their aircraft strength is at 613. Germany has 122 fighter aircrafts, 178 attack aircraft, 72 transport aircraft, 75 trainer aircraft. Their helicopter strength is at 313, and they have 65 attack helicopters. Their military contains 900 combat tanks, 8,389 armored fighting vehicles, 209 self-propelled artillery, and 38 rocket projectors. When it comes to their naval assets, their total naval assets are at 81. They have 10 frigates, 5 corvettes, 6 submarines, and their mine warfare strength is a total of 12. Continuing now in this list, we have the United Kingdom. So the British military is also known as Her Majesty's Armed Forces, and of course they're the military responsible for defending the United Kingdom as well as its overseas territories and their crown dependencies. They also work to expand the interests of Britain in the world, as well as they initiate peacekeeping efforts. This military was founded in the year 1707, and they rank number 8 in the world. The UK's available manpower is just under 30 million at 29,948,413. They have a total of 233,000 military personnel, And in terms of active personnel, that's at 150,000, and they have 83,000 reserve personnel. The UK's aircraft strength is at 811. They have 129 fighter aircraft, 150 attack aircraft, 46 transport aircraft, 307 trainer aircraft. Their helicopter strength is at 319, and their attack helicopters total at 49. When it comes to the combat tanks, that number is at 331. They have 4,607 armored fighting vehicles. Their self-propelled artillery total is at 89. Their total artillery sits at 126, and they have 35 rocket projectors. The UK's total naval assets are a total of 76. They have 1 aircraft carrier, 13 frigates, 6 destroyers, 22 patrol vessels, and their mine warfare strength is a total of 13. The second most powerful nation in this episode is the country of France. So the French armed forces includes the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the National Guard, and the Gendarmerie of the French Republic. Excuse me if I butchered that French. France also has the world's 3rd largest nuclear arsenal, and they sit behind the United States and Russia. Their military was founded in the year 1792, and they rank number 5 in the world. For available manpower, France has 30,111,868. Their total military personnel is a total of 388,635. They have 205,000 active personnel and 183,635 personnel in reserve. Their aircraft strength is a total of 1,248. France has 273 fighter aircraft as well as 273 attack aircraft. They have 128 transport aircraft, 256 trainer aircraft, and their helicopter strength is 566, and they have 56 attack helicopters. France has 406 combat tanks, 6,300 armored fighting vehicles, 109 self-propelled artillery, 152 towed artillery, and 12 rocket projectors. France's naval assets total 118, and they have 4 aircraft carriers, 11 frigates, 12 destroyers, 23 patrol vessels, and they have a mine warfare strength of 17. Now, coming down to the most powerful nation in Europe, Russia. So the military forces of the Russian Federation was established after the Soviet Union was dissolved. The service branches in the Russian military include the ground forces, the aerospace, the maritime fleet, which are made up of the coastal troops, the naval infantry, strategic missile troops, airborne troops, as well as the special operations forces. So the Russian armed forces is one of the world's largest military forces and also the world's 2nd largest arms exporter. It was founded on May 7th, 1992, and they rank number 2 in the world. Their available manpower is 69,640,160. Russia's total military personnel is 3,586,128, and they have 1,013,628 active personnel. Their reserve personnel is a total of 2,572,500. Now, in terms of their aircraft strength, that number is 4,078, and their fighter aircrafts are a total of 869. They have 1,459 attack aircraft, 401 transport aircraft, 494 trainer aircraft, and Russia's helicopter strength is at 1,485, and they also have 514 attack helicopters. For combat tanks, they have a total of 21,932. Their military also contains 50,049 armored fighting vehicles. Their self-propelled artillery total at 6,083, and their total artillery total 4,465. They also have 3,860 rocket projectors. In terms of naval assets, Russia has 352. They have 1 aircraft carrier, 13 frigates, 13 destroyers, 82 corvettes, 56 submarines, 45 patrol vessels, and their mine warfare strength is a total of 47. We have the nation of Iraq. Iraq has dropped a lot of its military spending recently, and now the country's military has made significant gains in recent years in battles against enemy militants. They have been helped and assisted by the United States as well as other Western powers, and also they've received a lot of military advice from Iran's Al-Quds
Brigade. Since the implementation of the United States Iraq Status of Forces Agreement back on January 1st, 2009, the Iraqi military, as well as the forces of the Ministry of Interior, are responsible for providing security as well as upholding law in all of Iraq. Their total military personnel sit at 165,000, and they have a defense budget of $1.73 billion. The nation of Bangladesh comes in at number 9. So Bangladesh's defense budget, it actually accounts for about 6% of the entire national budget. And Bangladesh is located between 3 nuclear states. Now they share a 4,156 border with India, as well as they're close to China and Pakistan. And its military also helps to maintain internal security and looking after both national security and stability, as well as they have to attend to international disaster relief through the UN and also UN peacekeeping missions. So they keep busy, they have to constantly be on their toes. They never know what's going to happen, especially in their location. Now over the past decade, Bangladesh has continued to expand its military arsenal by expanding ammunition manufacturing, as well as purchasing fighter aircraft, and even added some submarines. Now their total military personnel sit at 160,000, and they have a defense budget of $3.8 billion. Number 8 brings us Malaysia. While Malaysia has never really fought in a conventional conflict before, it does have a pretty modern military, and it balances its strategic posture between naval strength, technological modernization, as well as their air superiority. Now Malaysia is in dispute with China's claim over the South China Sea, as well as it's an active member of UN peacekeeping forces. Now while they struggle with financial limitations as well as currency instability, its military does continue to grow and modernize surprisingly. It does face a lot of challenges of matching assets that are incompatible with the domestic and international threats that they face. Nevertheless, they have a pretty large military force with the total military personnel sitting at 410,000, but their defense budget is just $4 billion. Algeria comes in at number 7. Algeria is the largest Arab country by size, and it has invested steadily in its military force ever since it achieved independence. The Algerian forces have been on active footing since its founding, first fighting for independence, a civil war dubbed the Black Decade, followed by 2 more decades of protecting its major borders. Now it's also the only country outside of China that has obtained the Russian S-400 missile system, and it's one of the best air defense systems ever made. Now Algeria has some troubling borders with neighbors including Libya as well as Mali, and actively supports the Polisario Front, which seeks the independence of the disputed territory of Western Sahara from the country of Morocco. They have 280,000 total military personnel at their disposal, and they fund everything with a $13 billion defense budget. Moving on now to the nation at number 6, we have Saudi Arabia. Now the Saudi Arabian military is one of the best armed forces in the region. Now in past years, it has fought a very intense war with Yemen, and while Yemen had been like a testing ground for Saudi Arabia's military, this long and drawn out war has actually drawn significant international condemnation over the heavy human toll that it took, as well as humanitarian concerns over famine and disease in the country. They have drastically increased their military personnel to 803,000, and their defense budget is a whopping $67.6 billion. With Indonesia set to become the world's 4th largest economy by the year 2050, its military continues to grow in leaps and bounds. Its manpower, economy, and political clout are enough to ensure internal stability as well as growth as it continues to pursue an aggressive military diversification strategy. Now recently, it applied an anti-access area denial or A2AD strategy, giving it even stronger leverage over its neighbors. In Indonesia, modernization capabilities may be the precursor to larger regional ambitions in the future. So we just gotta wait and see as this nation continues to expand. Their military personnel sit at 800,000, and their defense budget, $7.6 billion. But that's more than likely gonna increase in the next year. Pakistan comes in at number 4. So the Pakistan military is very robust, very diverse, and it has a long-standing military tradition. In recent years though, it has leveraged stronger engagement with Saudi Arabia and China to modernize its forces with heavy military technology exchange and weapons development. Now operationally, Pakistan has one of the largest armies in the entire region. And you know, they're heavily supported by their powerful intelligence service, and they're fueled by a drive to develop their defense industry capacities and manufacturing modern firearms and ammunition. It is also one of the few countries in the region with nuclear capabilities. Now, the Arms Control Association puts Pakistan's nuclear stockpile at about 140 weapons, and that ranks it number 6 in the world when it comes to nuclear weapons. Their total military personnel are 1,204,000, and they have a defense budget at $11.4 billion. Lucky number 3, that goes to Iran. Iran has been able to effectively manage large militias while aligning them with its overall military posture through tried and tested embedded officers and leadership. Now, over years of sanction, Iran developed a significant national defense industry, and it's made major progress towards becoming a nuclear state. Some believe that it already is a nuclear state. Its armed forces are also viewed as being very strong in asymmetric warfare. Iran has also provided extensive technical and military support to the Assad regime in Syria. And with the whole feuding that has developed with the United States, especially at the start of 2020, it looks like Iran is going to be investing a lot more in their military. While currently their total military personnel sit at 873,000, and their defense budget is $19.6 billion. Turkey comes in at number 2. So Turkey's armed forces have been on an active footing for a number of years. On top of its heavy presence over in Syria, Turkey has really developed a strong defense industry, manufacturing autonomous armed drones, as well as state-of-the-art cruise missiles and some amazing indigenous battle tanks, as well as battle-tested attack helicopters. Now, while it ranks as one of the strongest military forces in the Muslim world, as well as the Middle East, so this is why it ranks at number 2 on this list. Turkey has also established large forward operating bases in Qatar and Somalia, expanding its geopolitical reach and force projection capacity. Their total military personnel sit at 735,000, and their defense budget is $19 billion. Unfortunately for them, they did bump down from number 1 to number 2. And we have a new number 1. It's Egypt. Egypt recently bumped to number 1 spot in terms of being the most powerful Muslim nation. And I mean, we saw this coming if you were monitoring Egypt's history, because with the rise of President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, the Egyptian military has been given free rein to expand and embed itself in nearly every aspect of Egyptian society, on top of a larger defense budget that they were given, as well as tax exemptions and lucrative private contracts. Now, the Egyptian military has made major progress in modernizing its military since Sisi took power, with gradual procurements of new state-of-the-art weaponry, revamped supply chains, as well as more attention given to its navy. And we can see this in their new figures, because their total military personnel sit at 920,000, and they have a defense budget of $11.2 billion. That jumped up from $4.4 billion in past years. Vietnam comes in at number 10, and their army is known as the People's Army of Vietnam, aka the Vietnamese People's Army, and it's the military force of the Socialist Republic of Vietnam. The People's Armed Forces includes the ground force, the Navy, the Air Force, as well as the Border Defense Force and the Coast Guards. When it comes to power, their power rating is 0.3988, so Vietnam is the 23rd most powerful country in the world. They have a total of 5,482,000 military personnel. They have 318 aircrafts in their possession. Of those aircrafts, 108 are fighter aircraft, and for the total tanks, they have 2,575, as well as 2,530 armored fighting vehicles. When it comes to their navy, they have 65 naval assets, and they also have a total of 140 helicopters. Now, their defense budget sits at $3,365,000,000. Now moving on to the country of Taiwan. The Republic of China Armed Forces, commonly known as the Taiwanese Armed Forces, are the armed forces of the Republic of China now on Taiwan. And this encompasses the Army, the Navy, including the Republic of China Marine Corps, Air Force, and the Military Police Force. Their power index rating is 0.3956, and they rank 22nd in the world for military power. When it comes to total military personnel, Taiwan has 1,890,000
800,000. Their total aircraft sit at 837. They have 137 fighter aircraft, 1,855 combat tanks. Their armored fighting vehicles total at 2,050, and they have a total of 87 naval assets. For helicopters, their totals equal 837, and they have a defense budget of $10,725 million. Moving on down the list, we have North Korea coming up next. The Korean People's Army is an institution of the Workers' Party of Korea, and it constitutes the de facto military forces of North Korea. Under the Sungum policy, it is the central institution of North Korea's community. Kim Jong-un is the supreme commander and the chairman of the Central Military Commission. North Korea's power index rating is 0.3274, and they rank 18th in the entire world. 7,580,000 is their total military personnel. They have 949 total aircraft and 458 fighter aircraft. For combat tanks, that total is at 6,075. Their armored fighting vehicles are 10,000. That's a lot. Their naval assets are 967, and when it comes to total helicopters, that is 204. All of this funded by a defense budget of $7.5 billion. Okay, so now let's see what Indonesia has to offer. The Indonesian National Armed Force are the military forces of the Republic of Indonesia, and it consists of the Army, Navy, as well as the Air Force. So the President of Indonesia is the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces. Their power index rating is 0.2804, and they rank 16th in the entire world. Their total military personnel is 800 million. For aircrafts, they have a total of 451 and 41 fighter aircraft. They have 315 combat tanks in their possession, as well as 1,300 armored fighting vehicles. Their total naval assets sit at 221, and they have a total helicopter strength of 192. Now their defense budget is a total of $6.9 billion. In at the number 6 spot in this episode is Pakistan. The Pakistani Armed Forces are the military forces of Pakistan, and they are the 6th largest in the entire world in terms of active military personnel, as well as the largest among the Muslim countries. And when it comes to military power, their rating is 0.2798. They rank 15th in the world in terms of military power, and they have a total of 1,204,000 total military personnel. Their total aircraft count is at 1,342. They also have 348 fighter aircraft, 2,200 combat tanks. Their armored fighting vehicles total are at 3,665, and they have 197 total naval assets. For helicopters, that count is at 322. And the defense budget of Pakistan sits at $7 billion. Their Iranian armed forces is made up of the Army, the Revolutionary Guard Corps, and the law enforcement forces of the Islamic Republic of Iran. These forces total approximately 520,000 active personnel. Now, all the branches of the armed forces fall under the command of the General Staff of Armed Forces. Their military power index rating is 0.2606, and they rank 14th in the entire world. When it comes to total military personnel, not just the active personnel, that number sits at 873,000. Pakistan's total aircraft count is at 509. They have 142 fighter aircraft. Their combat tank total is 1,634. Pakistan in their possession, they have 2,345 armored fighting vehicles, and their total naval assets are at 398. And for their helicopter count, that number is at 126. Their military defense budget is $6.3 billion. We're almost at the bottom of the list. Coming up next is South Korea. The Republic of Korea's armed forces, also known as the ROK Armed Forces, are the armed forces of South Korea, of course. They were created in the year 1948 following the division of Korea, and the ROK Armed Forces is one of the largest standing armed forces in the entire world because they rely on millions of personnel. Their power index rating is 0.1761, and they rank 7th in the entire world. That's a very powerful military force they have. Their total military personnel sit at 5,827,250. For their total aircraft, that number is 1,614, 406 fighter aircraft, 2,654 combat tanks. They have a total of 2,870 armored fighting vehicles, 166 naval assets, and a helicopter count at 777. Now, their defense budget is a whopping $38,300,000,000. So kicking off the top 3 in this episode is the country of Japan. The Japan Self-Defense Forces, also known as the Japanese Armed Forces, are the unified military forces of Japan that were established back in the year 1954, and they are controlled by the Ministry of Defense. Japan's power index rating is 0.1707, and they rank 6th in the entire world in terms of military power. Their total military personnel sit at 303,157. They have 1,572 total aircraft in their possession, and out of those they have 297 fighter aircraft. Japan's military has 1,004 combat tanks, as well as 3,072 armored fighting vehicles. When it comes to their total naval assets, that number totals 131, and for their helicopter count, it is at 636. Their defense budget is $47 billion. India at number 2. The Indian Armed Forces are the military forces of the Republic of India, and it consists of 3 professional uniformed forces. They're known as the Indian Army, the Indian Navy, and the Indian Air Force. Now, the Indian Armed Forces is the world's 10th largest employer by number of employees, and they total 1.3 million employees. Their power index rating sits at 0.1065, and they rank 4th in the entire world for military strength. When it comes to their total military personnel, that number sits at 3,462,500, and their total aircraft strength is at 2,082. They have 520 fighter aircraft, 4,184 combat tanks, and 2,815 armored fighting vehicles. For their total naval assets, that number is 295, and their total helicopter count is 692. All of this funded by a defense budget of $55,200,000,000. Alright guys, so we're at the number 1 spot, and you probably guessed this already. We have the country of China. The Chinese People's Liberation Army is the armed forces of the People's Republic of China, and also its founding and ruling political party, the Communist Party of China. The PLA consists of 5 professional service branches, and those are the Ground Force, the Navy, the Air Force, the Rocket Force, and the Strategic Support Force. The People's Liberation Army is the world's 3rd largest employer by number, and they employ 2.52 billion employees. Their military power index rating is 0.0673, and they rank 3rd in the entire world. Their total military personnel is 2,693,000, and they have 3,187 total aircraft, as well as 1,222 fighter aircraft. For combat tanks, they have a ton. They have 13,050, and their armored fighting vehicles, even more. They have 40,000 of those things. Their naval assets sit at 714, and they have a total helicopter strength of 1,004. Now, their defense budget is pretty massive at $224 billion.